just for the listeners, this episode is with Hazel, who's many things, but energy healing work is kind of her thing. So yeah, Hazel, what sort of things are you doing at the moment? What sort of...
So at the moment, well, I'm an intuitive healer. I use Reiki predominantly, but over time that's kind of gone into other things. At the moment, I'm doing a lot of animal healing work. I do a lot of shamanic healing with people, and womb healing and sound healing. So kind of,
Quite the
I guess,
variety, yeah.
quite a variety. I guess the focus this month, as we're in October, is I've got the horse healing. I'm teaching animal healing at the end of the month in Malaga, so that's quite a big thing that's coming up this month.
Yeah, I've heard about that. That
Yeah.
sounds amazing.
And yeah, starting to do sound healing journeys as well, more
Nice.
locally, so that's good.
That sounds amazing. So just to sort of give an idea of your journey, because it's
Yeah.
quite a lot of things to be dipping into, a lot of
Yeah.
skills to be having. I guess it's been a long learning journey for you. How did that sort of start?
So that started 11 years ago, and I was at a point where I'd gone through a traumatic ordeal, shall we say, in a relationship that I had, and it left me with feeling high anxiety, depression, just all of those things, and also not feeling that I was able to talk about it with anybody, because if I did, I wouldn't be able to, keep going in a forward trajectory and keep work, and because I was still going to work every day with this
Yeah.
kind of mask on of I'm happiness, because I worked in customer services for a local council, so it was all like helping people, but inside it was I'm dying inside, and I'm not who I am. I'm a shell of who I was today, or I am today, should I say. And a friend of mine who I've known for must be like 20 years now, she lives in Holland. Back then, she did Reiki, but it was very like kind of really fringe. You wouldn't talk about it as much as now. I mean, 11 years on, it's come a really long way, and a lot of people tend to kind
Yeah.
of feel more comfortable, I guess, talking about energy healing. She hadn't seen me for a year. She didn't know what was going on, and we go camping together every year with a big group of friends. And I went, even though I just hid in my tent for the first few days,
Yeah.
because I was terrified of people seeing what was going on inside me, because I was like, I can't hold myself together if they can really see the pain that I'm in. And just when she arrived to the campsite, there was just something in me that almost called me to go to her, which even to this day, I can't really describe it. And I went to her, and as soon as she saw me, she looked at me and she just said, "Come with me, I'm going to give you some energy." And I wasn't really in a place to kind of ask any questions about what she was going to do. So she just took me into her tent and she said, "I'm going to put my hands on you and you're going to feel some energy."
Yeah.
And boy, did I. I sat on a little stool and she put her hands on my shoulders, and it was like... It kind of felt like if somebody had covered you with 50,000 blankets that were invisible,
Yeah.
and that she was just like pulling them off one at a time, and I was getting lighter and lighter, is the only way I can kind of describe it. And that someone had turned the tap on, because my eyes were just weeping.
Yeah.
So it wasn't like normal crying. It was a release weep, like the body was weeping, and it was like uncontrollable. I couldn't stop any of that. And then afterwards, I kind of felt a little bit drunk, to be honest. I kind of came out the tent and was like, whoa.
Yeah.
And she gave me plenty of water, and then, she said, you need to rest. And it wasn't until I woke up the next day, when I woke up and I thought, where have I been? And I felt incredibly amazing. All of the depression, all of the anxiety, it was just gone. It
Yeah.
just disappeared. And I was sat outside her tent waiting for her to tell me, like, what is it? What
Yeah.
did you do to me? What
Yeah,
is this
yeah.
magic stuff?
Yeah.
And that's when she explained, like, it's Reiki, it's energy healing. And she said, you're going to need more. You've got, many things that you've been through in your life. And she
Yeah.
was explaining this gets trapped in our bodies and it can really help you. So That's kind of where the journey started, and it led me to research all about energy healing.
That's incredible. That's yeah, like a one-stop experience that just totally
It,
converts in a way. Yeah, I guess it was that. Would you say that's sort of an intro to your spirituality as well? Do they sort of come hand in hand, do you think?
yeah, I think they came hand in hand, because before that point, I was very switched off to any of that, and I
Mm.
would. I can honestly say that 11 years ago, if someone told me what I was doing now, I'd say to them, "You need a straitjacket." Like, I was an on the fence person for sure, and I wasn't really in that world in whatsoever. And so that kind of having that healing and having all of that stuff cleared for me also felt like an awakening.
Yeah.
I felt totally awake, and even from that day I was seeing things, and I was starting to go, oh, I'm feeling into synchronicities and and all these things that were just happening, and that was a real start of all of that, really.
Yeah. Um, I know with synchronicities, I know that that can be the thing that's leveled sort of against spirituality. You know,
Yeah.
like, oh, synchronicities can just happen. They can be circumstance, but
Yeah.
actually, when you feel them like that, and when they're that strong, it's almost indistinguishable from the bumping into someone at a shop kind of thing. You know, it's like
Yeah, this is a different type of synchronicities, because this is a thing.
it's like something you can inherently sort of feel,
Yeah, you.
almost as if your body is moving towards the thing that you need to find.
Yeah.
Um, yeah, that's amazing.
Yeah.
That's
It's
quite the story.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Yeah, it is. Even when I tell it, I'm like, oh, and it comes back around. It never surprises me. Well, it was a massive part of all of that, and also afterwards, I learnt Reiki, because it so intrigued me, and I was like, I need more of this. I need to find out about more of it. And then
Yeah.
the group that I went to for that course, there was 2 other women there, and they were like, we want to heal the world, and I was like, I just want to heal myself. Is that okay?
As
And
always, where you've got to start, right?
yeah, it
Yeah,
is,
yeah.
but it also, because I think a lot of people deem it's selfish to put yourself first. That comes in a lot with a lot of people,
Yeah.
and so to have this thing where it's like, oh yeah, you can receive this, and it's like, oh, but you've got to do it for others. You don't. You absolutely don't. You can
Yeah.
just do it for yourself. So I spent a good year just working on myself before I did anything with anybody, and I
Yeah.
never entered that with the idea of I'm gonna then work with people, or I'm gonna do what I do now. It just naturally kind of evolved that way.
Yeah. In a way, I think that shows the power of some of this healing, because when you do encounter it for the first time, you know, it's such a strong level of how you were the day before going into that tent, and how you were coming out of it, that it does become a bit inspiring. Like, wow, I need to share this. Like, it's
Yeah.
something that, yeah, like in the Western medicine sometimes struggles to get that, because they sort of, you know, you might gradually heal someone with some sort of medication, or you might gradually take away the symptoms with a medication. This sounds like
It was.
it's quite a deep level of healing, isn't it?
Yeah, it was very, very deep, and it's not. I wouldn't say that level of deep healing happens with everybody. It doesn't always happen that way, and that's something I always like to share, because I don't want to give that impression like, someone could have been under depression for 15 years and they're not going to come, and it's going to be like, you're going to come out tomorrow and you're going to be absolutely fine and it's all going to be gone. That was just my journey, and everybody's
Yeah.
journey is so different. I've always felt like, for me, I do believe the reason it happened that way is because I needed that dramatic change to put me on the right path of where I was meant to go.
Yeah.
And just how it's organically evolved as well, that it needs to be shared in that way.
Yeah.
That makes sense.
Yeah, definitely.
Yeah.
And so the first thing you trained yourself on was Reiki.
Yeah.
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 How did that go from how was the switch from sort of being a client to becoming a healer? How
Okay.
was that sort of journey?
It was actually so after in my first year of doing my Reiki training, and I did a lot of self healing for myself. So like every day,
Mm.
I it was literally a book that fell off a shelf at my feet, and it was a book on reflexology. And I picked it up, and I was like, "Whoa, this is really fascinating." And there was something in me. It wasn't just like, oh, I think I should do that. It was more of a body feeling of there's a must to learn this. So
Yeah.
I signed up for a reflexology course with no intention of like, I'm going to, do reflexology for the rest of my life, or I want to do that. It was more about the connection between energy and the body.
Yeah.
And when I was reading this book, I was like, oh, that makes a lot of sense with the energy stuff and how it kind of, connects there. And so it was really, I guess, a curiosity.
Yeah.
And through doing that course, you have to do like 100 hours of reflexology. So that's a lot of feet. And that involves people and case studies. So it was through my case studies when people were coming to me for the reflexology, I was then picking up on other things energetically in the body. So then I'd ask them if it's okay if I could do some Reiki.
Yeah.
And that's how that kind of evolved, because I then realized I guess the power of combining energy healing with like the physical modality of reflexology, and when you blend those two things together, just how it boosts that. So it was
Yeah.
like boosting the treatment for somebody and clearing their energy at the same time. It was mind blowing, and so that then kind of evolved from there. And then people would say to me like, you're amazing, like you're really good healer, can I just come just for a healing session rather than reflexology? And I was like, okay. And then people just kept coming. It wasn't even, I didn't put it out there.
Yeah.
People would just find me and come for healing sessions.
That's really nice. It's like, yeah, it's you've kind of found that, or it's found you, or it's always meant to be that you're doing that.
Yeah.
I like the way reflexology was this first sort of add-on to Reiki, because maybe that's a signifier of your spiritual journey as well. It's like, oh, it's still testing whether it's still testing the physical elements of it,
Yeah.
which I think is really important for people. I think what puts people off with spirituality sometimes is you meet somebody that's had 10 or 11 years of doing this work, and so that can be a big leap for the mind to go, well, hang on a minute, because they're not seeing the steps of what it's taken, and you're continually sort of testing these things with your work and learning and evolving. So I think that's a really good first step. I actually don't know much about reflexology. I guess it's the points in the body that
So we've got 7,000 nerve endings in the feet, and the theory of like reflexology is that you can map out the body on the soles of the feet. So you have 5 zones on your feet. So if you think about your toes or your hands, you've got these 5 zones.
yeah.
And if you're working particularly on the feet, any area, and you're like, say your big toe is like zone 1, it will affect anywhere up in the body, up that line through the body from the head to the toe, if that makes sense.
Yeah.
So it's and even I have met people who are like, I can't even believe that. It's just too out there for them. But for me, it's that it's the combination of combining the physical with the energetic stuff, and it just marries it together really
Totally.
beautifully.
I mean, for me, it makes sense from an evolutionary sense as well. We've probably gone, we've definitely gone longer without wearing shoes. The need to have such sensitive feet. I'm always amazed that if I go to stand on something spiky, even if it's in the arch of my foot, how quick my foot reacts to that thing. If there's, your body is evolving to sense its environment, which I think is totally true. Our bodies have been evolving to adjust to our environment. In a way, you'd need to know what you're standing on. You'd need to know the textures, you'd need to know that maybe you've passed across some animal tracks and something in your feet is extra sensitive to nuance on the ground, right? I'm not sure if any science has been done on that, but I imagine that they must be on some level the most sensitive part of us, but yet in modern culture they seem to be the thing that's kind of caged in. And you know, we're not very
we're not connected to our feet
we're
at
not
all.
connected at all, and you get trainers that are designed to sort of squash your feet and stuff.
Exactly. And that to me kind of leads me to just when we're talking about feet, my brain's always thinking about grounding and how important grounding is to us.
Yeah.
And the feet, essentially, like when we're bare feet and we're on the earth, we're connected to the earth.
Yeah.
And so we are grounding our energy, just kind of like electricity needs to be earthed.
Yeah.
It's, to me, it's like the same thing. So yeah, it's our feet are really important in terms of our energy, so in the physical sense and the energetic sense as well.
Yeah,
that's where we get
definitely.
our ground. That's where we can pull ourselves back into the body through the feet.
Yeah, and I guess has do all of the things you do, all your specialities, do they all combine to one overarching thing? Like, is it something that we've lost? I know I've explored shamanism a little bit, and it seems like there's a lot of these concepts within shamanism. Is that something that you've found, or is it that there are lots of these modalities from different sort of ideas?
I think that it's a really good question. There are everything that I do, all the elements, they all interlink. They're all really covering the same thing. It's just doing it in a slightly different way.
Yeah.
And I think there's a real beauty to that and a need, because us as beings, we all need something slightly different. So, for instance, like the sound healing that I do,
Yeah.
I mean, I bring that in a very, I would say, kind of a shamanic way, with like drumming and voice and the intuitive stuff. And I come in with a very kind of earthly grounding energy when I bring sound in for people.
Yeah.
And you'll have some people that really react to sound, and that's the thing that's gonna solidify or clear or cleanse their energy or bring them back to that nice restorative balance.
Yeah.
Whereas for someone else, they're like, no, I need physical touch. I need, like massage, because I do different types of body massage interlinked with the energy.
Yeah.
And so for them, that's the thing that grounds them back in. That's the thing that kind of balances them out.
Yeah.
So it's, I suppose my answer to the question is they all do the same thing. They're all reaching the same outcome.
Yeah.
It's just the journey that's different.
Almost like the body's like a tuning fork,
Yeah.
and it needs something to bring that sort of frequency back in.
Absolutely, because
Yeah.
we are vibration, we are frequency, we are energy. And it's that, and I know that's quite a big concept for some people to go, what, I'm a vibration? But we are a vibration. To me, we are a frequency, and so different things set us off, and it's like bringing that back into balance. And it's like, so I like that analogy that the body's like a tuning fork.
Yeah, it makes sense whenever I think of this sound energy healing.
Yeah.
Almost like, in a way I look at certain mental health and depression. I mean, I look at depression as if it's a numbing. Your body has numbed these emotions because they're so raw, and then your depression isn't necessarily like a deep sadness, it's like a deep numbing. And so the feeling that you get when you've lost depression is that you're in touch with your emotions again, good and bad.
Yeah.
And that's lovely.
Yeah.
So it's almost like, if you look at that, like tension is kind of locked and stoic, and it's I think I imagine some of the energy healing work goes on sort of tension, and then tension almost being hidden in certain parts of the body, almost like you've experienced tension. Like I read this thing Sorry, I'm going on a bit of a ramble
No,
here,
it's
but
okay.
I read this thing about certain traumas affecting certain parts of the body. So,
Mhm.
like the lower back, for example, can often be like sexual trauma as
Yeah.
a child, can
Yeah.
be in the lower back. And I wonder if there's like some quite practical reasons why that area of the body stays tense, and then rather than being able to release that tension, you can't, right? Because you're having to just get through that moment, and you're having to get through that experience, and you're
Yeah.
having to, like you said, you know, sometimes mental health is just, I can't really process it right now because I've got to go to work.
Exactly that. Yeah, you
And
have
so
to.
it just kind of that tension gets hidden in the body,
Yeah.
and then it's just finding different ways to get to that. Is, I mean, that's a massive oversimplification, but
Yeah. No, I get what I get where you're going with that though, because when I treat people, it's very much that I find that they have, and I can feel it in their body, so I can feel old stored energy in the body,
yeah,
and it's kind of and I can tell whether it's like an old thing or a current thing for the person. So sometimes it's like I'm like, whoa, they've got all this tension, like it's all in their left knee, for example, and
yeah,
I'm like, this is old. This is, you know, from maybe years ago when they were younger, so like something from their childhood. And it is that thing of, especially as children,
yeah,
we something happens, and it might just be a tiny. I'd say all traumas are different, but something like you were in a class with your best friend, like when you were 5 or 6, and then you get separated.
yeah,
Just that can be a massive trauma for a young child.
definitely,
And
yeah,
so in that moment, it's almost like something happens where they're like, oh, I've got to kind of protect myself from this feeling. And so you just carry on with the day. And so it's like, I can't process that right now. So
yeah,
it gets pushed back, and subconsciously it's still there. That trauma is still there. But it finds a nice little place to sit in the body,
yeah,
and the body will hold all of that stuff. And even the more extreme emotions that we have, like anger and grief, and those really like heavy emotions, they often will get like really super stored in the body as well, which is why going for something like, you know, energy healing or massage with energy healing is going to help to release that and shift that out.
yeah,
Whereas I guess if you're just talking about it, you could talk about the same thing for a lot of time, but
yeah,
it's not actually going to help you to remove that old story that's weaved its way into the cells of the body, if that makes sense.
definitely. When I was doing some of my counselling training, my tutor said that basically all counsellors now are training in some version of talk therapy alongside any form of something that sort of addresses the body.
Yeah.
I seem to have learnt this word like somatic release, but I don't know if it is somatic release. But
Yeah.
yeah,
That's quite
being able
popular
to
at the moment. So the
yeah,
somatic
yeah.
stuff seems to be lifting off,
I
which I'm
haven't,
very happy
I
about,
haven't
because it's the
thesaurus
body.
that yet, and seen if I'm saying the right thing. But
Yeah.
it makes total sense to me. This might be giving away, not. This might be giving away a magician's trick in a way of like, or not paying it enough attention. But when you say there's a difference between sort of knowing something's old and something's new in the
Yeah.
body, is that sort of something that you're feeling?
It's an intuitive feeling. Yeah, it's such a hard thing for me to describe to people, because
Absolutely,
like
yeah.
when it's happening in the moment, it's like, you know, my client's there, they're on the table, and I'll say something, and they're like, oh yeah, that's like spot on. How do you know that? And I'm like, I just do. I
Yeah.
cannot explain that. So the way that I try and explain it is that I am a channel of energy.
Yeah.
I'm intuitive, and I read the body, and it's a bit like reading a book, if you like. And so there's lots of information that's like stored within different areas of the body, and different cells have, you know, like a different emotion that they're holding on to.
Yeah.
And as that's ready to come out, like in a session with somebody, I feel it in my body. So I will feel the physical sensation of maybe a pain or an emotion. So
Yeah.
I'll suddenly feel like, oh, this is anger, or this is sadness, or this is grief, and I can feel that.
Yeah.
and feel like where that is in their body. And then something gives me the guidance of like if it's a present thing or if it's something old.
Yeah.
And so I can interpret the two between the difference. And I guess that really only comes down to like my practice and how long I've been, how that's evolved and how that's done. But it is definitely
Yeah.
an intuitive insight.
I mean, it could be a ultimate empathy. The more we feel empathy for someone, the more we can tap into their pain. It totally makes sense that. It totally makes sense that it was probably a skill that more people used to have. I can imagine before language that people wouldn't need to vocalize that they're in pain.
No.
The other person would just know.
Yeah, and I absolutely believe that everybody has this skill, because people go, oh, you're some people have got off my table and gone, oh my God, you're like the Messiah. And I'm like, no, just, it does make me laugh, some of the things people come out with. But it is because it's so mind blowing when you have one of those big experiences where something's just released and it's like, wow, how did that happen? But it's in terms of, I've lost what I was going to say then, which happens to me quite a lot sometimes.
Yeah, it happens to me as well. About lots more people probably used to have this kind of...
Yeah, because I think we all have it. We all have that ability. Like, you could walk into a room, say you've gone to a party, and you walk in the room, and you're naturally feel drawn towards more people than others on an intuitive sense, whether you consciously recognize that or not. And even the same as maybe you're getting on public transport and you're getting on a bus, and you get on the bus and you subconsciously make a decision about where you're going to sit by who if there's only like 3 spaces left, you're going to choose who you're going to sit next to.
Yeah.
And I do believe that some of that is a subconscious kind of energetic thing of like, oh, that person kind of is sending off the same kind of vibe that I have, and I feel comfortable to be near them.
Yeah.
And the same thing is like if we're in a room full of people and you've got, say, I don't know, some grumpy looking people at one end, and then some people are laughing at the other, and then you've got some people that you're going to kind of go to where you feel drawn. And that's you're picking up on, people's feelings and emotions, and you're seeing that just with no words. Like there's no and that to me is that skill that everyone has, that intuitiveness that's already there, and that empathic feeling. And I do believe, like, even if you're just sat with one other person, you can almost often feel when maybe that person isn't themselves.
Yeah.
And you might not be able to put your finger on it, but you'll be like, oh, they're not right today.
Yeah.
And that is exactly you tapping into that empathic skill or that intuitive nature.
Yeah, definitely. And I can imagine there's lots of variations on that. So whenever I've had a psychedelic experience completely legally in somewhere like Amsterdam, I always notice for sort of the month after you're more tapped into that.
Yeah.
And I try and sort of pay attention to the nuance, because it's not necessarily the most energetic that you're drawn to.
Mm-hmm.
It feels like to me that there's the authenticity. So like a low energy, if it's authentic, that seems to be more what I'm drawn to.
Okay.
And if it's an authentic high energy,
yeah.
But if it's a fake one, like someone's putting it on, it feels like I'm drawn. Yeah,
like you're repelled.
I'm repelled from that. And I wonder if, I guess, when you're an energy healer, you're sort of noticing the different types of that. Are there more types, or is one just more open and one...
Do you mean in types of healers that are more open, or do you...
I guess when you sense someone's energy,
okay,
is there sort of is that sort of on a spectrum of, well to unwell, or energetic to low energetic?
Yeah. So the way I kind of like to describe it is like low vibration and high vibration. So everybody has a different vibration that they're running at, and I think definitely as the person that I have become through this healing work, and that I do pick up on that. So I find that I will be drawn more to people that are running at that higher vibration,
Yeah.
and I can sense it as well. So if I'm in a room through a lot of people, I can kind of sense where someone's at a lower vibration, and that wouldn't mean that I'm not going to interact with them, or I'm not going to, talk to them or anything like that. It's just that I can kind of sense where they are.
Yeah.
And so for me as a person, I'd be like, okay, I like my vibration to be, very healthy, should we say?
Yeah.
And so I want to maintain that because of the work that I do. So I've got to make sure that my vibration doesn't go to a point where it's so low where I'm becoming unhealthy and depressed and all of that.
Yeah.
So naturally, if we are surrounding ourselves with lots of people that are depressed and lots of people that are always you're always in that zone,
Yeah.
that's going to bring your vibration down. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
Yeah.
And definitely if you're in healing work, you're going to meet people that are really...
Exactly.
Yeah.
And I do. So just touching on that is that the fact that people that come to me, they are dealing with different things like depression, anxiety, various different things, or, struggling with physical pain. So I meet a lot of that every day. So every day I do self-healing for myself every day. So it's like maintaining my vibration. It's to shake it off. I've learnt techniques to clear and cleanse my physical energy. And this is something that it's like, I call it like spiritual hygiene. And there's a guy called Oliver Nino, who is another, I think he's called the energy activator. He's great. And he also talks about spiritual hygiene in terms of, so we're talked about like health and hygiene, like, make sure you get up and you brush your teeth and you have a shower and all of this. But we're not taught about spiritual hygiene in terms of, make sure you're grounded.
Yeah.
Make sure you clear and cleanse your energy. Like, don't go to sleep with other people's energy.
Yeah.
Because throughout the day, we are connecting with different people, we're seeing different people, whether it's on the phone or in person, and we carry that with us. So when you're going to bed, you're almost going to bed like with all of these different energies sitting within your, your physical body, mental body, emotional body, and spiritual body.
Yeah.
And so it's really good to kind of go, right, have a tool where you can go, right, I'm just going to cleanse my energetic body, my physical body, my emotional body, my spiritual body, and clear anything that doesn't belong to me, so that I'm only going to sleep with my own energy. So I'm waking up with my own energy. So those are things that I do on a daily basis to keep my vibration running where I feel is good for me.
Yeah.
And it's kind of like, that's something that I teach, and I helped, others to kind of learn about that and learn about vibration, but it is really important.
It really makes sense that that's important for everyone, but especially important for you.
Yeah, I really do. I do have to, and even in, I'm human. I have things that happen to me in life just like everyone else, that kind of things that set us off, where maybe, a family member's ill or something else has happened, or you've got a friend who's suddenly not a friend anymore because of something that's, they've gone down a different path, or somebody's passed away. Like, all these things happen to us in our life, and they affect us, emotionally, physically, mentally. And so as a healer, I'm not just, because I think I've got this work that I've got to maintain, but I will seek out those things that are going to help support me at times when I've got stress in my life. I will be doing extra. So on top of like my daily healing practice or my meditation or those things, I'll be like, okay, I need to go and see somebody for healing. I need to go and do a flotation tank. Like, I need to go and, source out these extra things to keep myself balanced, but also to help me work through my personal emotions and things that I'm dealing with as well.
Yeah, definitely.
So it's,
Are there some quick things that listeners could do that that might be basic steps that they can do to spiritually cleanse themselves? Because some of that sounds like there are similarities in what people are learning about what's good for them, like meditating before sleep, clearing your mind of stress. That sounds connected in some way, but is there any ways that you you recommend, or do you recommend for clients that they do certain things?
Yeah, I mean, I'm always recommending to my clients, and particularly people that are. I get a lot of people come to me that are generally empathic anyway, bless them. And so the biggest thing is to like clear your energy when you go to bed.
Yeah.
And I mean, you can do that in the morning as well. And I think it's not a hard process. I think for anybody maybe that hasn't done meditation or any of this or knows nothing about it, may find it challenging to begin with. But it's like anything, when we learn something new, it's practice, and I think practice makes practice. You're just gonna deepen that journey. But yeah, it's a very basic. It is a kind of a meditative tool.
Yeah.
So it is about if you're somebody who can visualize, that's great. And if you can't, that's okay too. It can just be a thought form. It doesn't need to be. You don't have to be able to visually see it or imagine it, because we all have different sensitivities. So we're going to do this in our own way. So what I'm about to tell you is like, it's an invitation, it's guidance. It's not, you don't have to do it exactly how I'm saying it. Find your way with it, I guess is what I'm saying. But it's just, making sure that you're somewhere comfortable, that you're either sitting or laying down is a good to start with. Closing the eyes and just dropping yourself into your breath. So bringing yourself and your awareness into your breath.
Yeah.
Bringing yourself into your heart space, and then just clearly setting an intention. And the intention is, I am clearing and cleansing everything that does not belong to me.
Yeah.
That may be sitting in my physical body, that may be sitting in my emotional body and my energetic body and my spiritual body. And if you like to work with colour, I would suggest like in visualising like a light coming down. It might be red, it might be orange. It doesn't matter what colour it is, it's whatever comes into your mind.
Yeah.
And just filling yourself up with that colour, like head to toe. And you can just think that. And as that colour is coming into your body, it's almost like having the intention that you're filtering out anything that's sitting within you that doesn't belong there.
Yeah.
Until it's at your toes.
Meaning that if you're sort of your body scanning and your body scanning a certain colour, you might struggle to feel a certain area. You
might do, yeah. And you don't have to. I wouldn't put too much pressure on like having to feel anything, or because I think when we're focusing on that, we lose the actual being and the doing of something. When we're expecting it to feel a certain way, it kind of takes it away. So it's just a case of like, just be in the process, set the intention, and believe that it is doing what you're intending. Because to me, with all of my work, the one thing that sticks out through everything that I do is intention.
Yeah.
Like, our intentions are hugely powerful.
Yeah.
And we really, I think, have lost just how powerful that is. Or we've lost the belief in it.
I totally agree.
And that intention of just setting that intention of, I'm going to clear and cleanse everything that doesn't belong to me, that might be sitting within my system, and bringing in a colour. And to me, like, colours have a vibration, they have a frequency. So if I think of like a gold colour, I'm like, to me, that has the vibration and frequency of divine love and pure love.
Yeah.
And who doesn't want that? Like, when you fill your body up with pure divine love, like, how is that going to make you feel?
Isn't it interesting that most of the world has fought wars over gold? And it has that same connection. Yeah.
I know, yeah.
The funny similarities you sort of see once you start your spiritual path, I think it makes everything kind of make a bit of sense.
Yeah, definitely.
Yeah, that's really interesting. I like the intention thing, as in, they don't need to feel and see if it's doing anything. It's kind of that natural trust that it is doing the thing.
Trust is huge.
It makes a lot of sense. I mean, there's lots. I think this is where science will prove spirituality. Yeah. Because, I mean, they realized a while back that the power of the placebo, and it just so happens that they've picked the term placebo, but actually it's not just the placebo effect. A placebo is a symptom of the body knows how to heal itself.
Yeah.
And that's the only way to test for that is by noticing these placebos.
Yeah.
So I think that's really interesting, and there's a lot more that's being proved about that. So I think science will inevitably just prove that mind-body connection more and more and more.
Absolutely.
So yeah, that's a great tip about the intention, I think.
Yeah, thank you. Yeah, that's good. Yeah, I'm very much. It's funny because at the beginning, I guess, of my, I suppose, spiritual journey and my healing work, so 11 years ago, I was never really into the science, and it's only actually through that journey that halfway through I'm like, oh my god, actually, I really do need to get into and really read up the science of what I'm doing, and through that I really discovered, oh my god, it's like we are in this electromagnetic field and science proves that, and that to me is all about energy. And so there is so much evidence out there for all of this stuff. I think it's just finding it, but also I like the beauty of that we don't need to have the scientific evidence.
Absolutely not.
Really, I think the only way that you are going to know, like, is, I guess, whether it's spirituality or is energy work, for me, is through the experience.
Yeah.
Because we only have that knowing, or you can say, I know this thing deeply because I have experienced it.
Yeah.
And to me, it's a bit like, if someone offered me like 3 different flavored cheesecakes, I'm going to say to them all, like, which one's like the best flavor, and they can tell me, and I'll be like, okay, but I'm only going to know whether that is through my own experience, and
Absolutely.
my taste buds are unique. So, and I think that's why it's so important when I meet other people and they're interested, and even people that are like totally on the fence, and they say, oh, I'm not sure if I'm open to it, and I'm like, well, you can try a taster session, like try 15 minutes or 20 minutes, and if you're not feeling it or you're not into it, like we don't have to kind of proceed with that, and then at least you will have that knowing whether it's for you and what your experience of that is.
Definitely. And I actually think, like you said, you're totally right that you can do one without the other. Like, you don't need to learn the science behind what you're doing, because both things will ultimately prove the same thing.
Yeah.
And it is that experiential element of it.
Yeah.
And I also think that's maybe why some people that are really against it don't encounter that feeling. If it's about intention and it's about opening your body up and being open in a way, like, if you're doubting a process, then your body isn't giving it that intention.
Yeah.
Your body isn't activating those natural healing things.
It puts up a bit of a defense.
Yeah.
It definitely does, because I've clients in the past where people come and they're naturally, when you're doing something for the first time, doesn't matter what it is, we get that little bit of like apprehension, and it's like, oh, I'm going into the unknown.
Yeah.
I'm not sure if I want to like delve into this, and also when you're coming in for like energy healing, it's like you are diving into your inner world, and that can be really scary for a lot of people.
Yeah.
And so naturally, it's like the first kind of 15 minutes of a session, I can feel it. It's almost like this layer that comes on top of the body, and it's like, okay, we kind of have to wait for them to drop into feeling okay and feeling safe. And once the kind of breath kind of comes in, and I'll bring people to their breath, because that always does help for us to kind of calm our system down, is coming back to our breath. And after that, it's like it's almost like I'll feel it, and it kind of goes pop, and then they're like, "Yep, I'm open. Let me just release everything."
Nice, yeah.
Which is always really lovely, and they always feel it as well. They're like, "Oh, the first 10 minutes I was really like tense, and then something happened, and I just dropped, and then it was amazing." So
nice.
yeah, there
it's
is
like
that.
the physical guard comes down.
Yeah.
I guess that happens in talk therapy as well, doesn't it? Where like
Definitely.
the subconscious can kind of defend the thing that they don't want to they don't want to talk about, and then once they feel comfortable with the talk therapist, then it all sort of comes out.
They'll drop in.
I think if I was ever doing therapy again, I wouldn't do any that don't address exactly what you're doing, like the energy side of it. And yeah, um, I guess you don't get that resistance with animals as well.
No.
I'm kind of
So,
fascinated in talking about the
yeah.
animal side of things, because in a way, what you're doing, once you learn how to heal a human and then you cross over to animals,
Yeah.
I imagine there's a deeper understanding of animals by venturing in and doing
Yeah.
that.
Animals are so beautiful to work with because they're not like us humans. They don't have any predispositions about the energy. They just know. They get it.
Yeah.
I
Dogs
will.
just love everyone, don't they? The
They
minute
d-
you walk in the room,
yeah.
they're like, "Oh, a new person to love."
Exactly,
Like,
and they read people's energies like straight away, and to me they are animals are the real healers of the world, and they are always absorbing our energies and helping us to feel better on lots of different ways, and it's kind of why they do need us humans to be able to learn how to heal them as well, to kind of clear their energies and to bring them back into balance. So that's
yeah,
really what I feel that I do when I'm working with animals, and it's just it's a beautiful thing that it can help them with, their physical ailments and recovery and all these different things. But they process the healing like immediately. So you will see an animal, I'll always ask their permission. If they, like you would with a human, you're not going to do anything, and they'll let you know.
yeah,
And you can physically see, like, if they don't want something, they're going to get up and walk away.
yeah. Body language.
They're gonna, their body language is
They're
huge.
masters at
With
it.
they
Yeah.
are absolute masters, and I just love it. So once they're happy, they want to receive the healing. You don't even need to kind of ask them like where do they want it. They will show you. They will literally push their body or turn their body
Yeah.
towards my hands to where, like, if they want it on their lower back, they'll turn round and like push their bum into my hands, or
Yeah.
they'll roll over and show me their tummy. Like, they'll just show you where it is. So that is kind of like looking into that communication with them. But they, in terms of processing it, you'll see them when an animal releases, when they're receiving energy healing, you'll see them yawn, sigh, they'll maybe lick, they might kind of chew, they might shake their body, and that's all them kind of going, oh yeah, that's great, I can release that now. And they do it instantly.
Yeah.
And then you literally see them afterwards, like they're brighter, they're lighter, and they just, yeah. It's a
I
very...
don't want to always talk about the science of things at all, but I guess
Yeah.
I ride that line all the time.
Mhm.
But yawning is a thing of, or scientists think that it can be like the brain cooling itself down. So
Yeah.
it's almost like a sign, like you say, when they're going through some healing,
Yeah.
that something big is going on.
Yeah,
and,
massive.
and it's exhausting, or it's your brain cooling itself down. So that makes a lot of sense.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's fascinating. I can
It's-
imagine it's super fun working on animals.
It is
yeah.
really fun. It is really super fun. It is I guess it is in all the work that I do. I love everything that I do. I have a real passion for it all.
Yeah.
But I do really, really love working with animals, and particularly horses. They are so special to me in some way that I just don't think I would ever be able to word, because it's just one of those things. And they are... when they're receiving healing, they like to kind of give back. I really see them as like the truth tellers. They will literally look into your soul,
Yeah.
and they work from heart. They are all heart. And so when they're receiving, they receive in that way as well. It's...
Can you explain that a little bit for people that might not know from heart? You're sort of talking about, they're not overthinking the things that you're putting forward.
Yeah.
They're just very in their body.
They're very in their body. Yeah, so I would describe horses as, I guess I would describe them as how they think. They think from their heart. So for us as humans, we're very much like in the mind, and so we can be like really overthinking. But when they approach us, they approach us from the heart center of the body. And so when they're looking at us, they're really looking from their heart into our heart.
Yeah.
And that's where you can really see someone. And that's why I truly believe, like, you get equine healing that people go for, where they actually go for therapy and there's a facilitator,
Yeah.
and they have a time with like one-on-one with the horse. They have these miraculous results because a horse, like, doesn't have any predispositions from a human. So they'll literally just come to you. So say if you're dealing with, I don't know, like you've got a lot of anger in you, they'll come at you and see that.
Yeah.
And when maybe we're holding on to this anger and we don't want to release it, but then someone comes to our heart and goes, I can see that, that's going to make you pop. Like it just comes out.
Yeah.
You'll have that release. Does that make sense?
Yeah, I think so.
Yeah.
It's a little. I relate that to when, when dogs that don't really bark at anyone suddenly see someone and they bark. I imagine that to be a similar thing, as if they can see that tension, they can see that sort of, they can see that emotion, even if the person is trying their best to hide it.
Yeah.
And I always, not with everyone, I mean, dogs sometimes bark just because they're barking, right? But when I see a dog that doesn't normally bark at someone and consistently, as if they're spooked, right?
Yeah.
It usually puts me off that person a little bit, because I'm like, whoa,
but it's
what have they
because
seen?
they
What is
usually animals mirror things in us. So I guess kind of to give you an example of that would be with my own dog. Like if I'm feeling emotional, or I've been a bit teary about something, my dog will do the thing that I need to be doing, which is dropping into my heart zone. She will literally come and lay her whole body and she'll press on my heart.
Yeah.
And that's not something that is normal behavior for my dog. She's not on her everyday basis. That's not what she does. But when I have had, it's something that I have noticed with her. I'm like, oh, she's literally telling me that I need to stop and I need to process this and I need to drop into my heart and I need to allow this to leave my body.
Yeah.
So they will do something to kind of mirror in, like, you got to slow down, you're doing too much, and they'll try and communicate that to us.
Yeah, that's lovely. When I heard that you were doing the animal healing, the first thought I had was that animals might naturally, I imagine that animals are so sort of good at regulating themselves that I couldn't really imagine positions where they might have bad energy or they might need some energetic healing, because they run when they need to run, they rest when they want to rest. But the more I thought about that, the more I thought, no, actually that's totally not true, is it? Because they're sort of fitting into our world, they're fitting into our patterns. I'm sure a dog, if they could choose, would run around all day in the wild. Are you getting a sense of what's needed for that animal, not just in sort of an energy healing way, but then in how to make sure that they don't become unwell again? Is that something that's been noticed?
When I work with animals, so if someone was to invite me and say, well, I'd like you to come and work with my dog or my horse or whatever, I don't just work with the animal, I work with the human as well.
Nice.
Because
because it's probably their fault.
The reason for that is because there is this thread of communication that goes between you and your animal. So if you imagine it like a thread, is the way that I like to describe it. And for example, I've had clients where they've called me because they've got a rescue dog. The dog is suffering from major anxiety, and I'm like, yeah, okay, I can definitely support and help with that process. But don't forget that there are other things, you still can go to the vets. There are lots of supplements and things that can help as well, but this is something that can support in that process. But when I went to this particular person, it was immediately, because I can read and scan the body, this person was presenting as very confident and very outwardly spoken and joyous and bubbly, but what I could see was, wow, they are really anxious, they're full of anxiety. And interestingly, I was like, wow, their dog's really anxious. And so what I could see was this thread of kind of anxiety bouncing between the dog and the owner. So although this dog was an anxious dog,
Yeah.
because the owner was anxious, it was like heightening that and not being able to even clear any of that on any level. So
Meaning that the owner of not owner of the dog, the
yeah,
person that
guardian.
lives with the dog,
Yeah.
isn't able to release his anxiety. Is that what you're saying?
Yeah, yeah. So it's almost like they're kind of feeding each other in a way.
Yeah.
It's just like, well, this kind of frequency and vibration of anxiety that's flowing backwards and forwards between the two of them. And so in terms of working with them, I'm like, okay, we're going to do healing on the dog, and we're going to work with clearing the anxiety and bringing that down to a level that's more manageable for your dog. But also now we need to work with you, and we need to clear and we need to get to the source of your anxiety and what that brings, because by you working with that, you're going to really help your dog, because animals are healers and they are naturally just wanting to make us feel good. It's like their job. They just want us humans to feel amazing. And so they're like, oh, and they can see that anxiety or they can see that stress in us. And so they'll come and give us a cuddle, or they'll lay by our feet. And we just see that as like, oh, that's nice, they're just with us. But they are literally absorbing that. I think the most extreme case I've ever seen with an animal was with a horse who had particularly, it was a rescue horse, and they had a very angry guardian before, and had literally soaked up so much anger into this horse's system that he was like nicking and biting and just all of this stuff that he would not usually do, because once you take in so much of like one emotion or one thing like that, it becomes too much, and then that changes your behavior. Like
Star
so
Wars.
The
dark side. Once you go too far down that path.
Once you go too far, that's it. You're on
anger leads to violence. All that.
Totally. And so then by having the energy like released and cleared and cleansed, this horse was like, oh, thank God for that. Like, I feel lighter. And so then wasn't, biting and nicking and chomping and, kicking the door so much, because he was like, oh, yeah, I just needed somebody to come along and help me release some of that. And that's the same for humans. Like, if we are totally consumed by one emotion so heavily, it becomes so overwhelming that you do, like you say, you're back to the dark side. You need support and help to bring you out of that vibration and bring you out of that frequency. And that's essentially what energy healing can do.
Yeah, it looks like there's kind of no barrier, is there, that's presented by the animal, in a way that, like, an anxious person living with somebody might create an anxious dynamic in the human relationship, and so it naturally translates to an animal. That really makes sense. And I cannot imagine it as well in quite a visible sense of, a dog. As soon as you get in from work, they come in, they try and calm you down, they try and relax you, and then they manage to do this over the evening. Then you go to work, they must be looking at us like, wait, where did you go? Because you just came back totally stressed. Like,
oh yeah,
what happened?
absolutely. I very much, when I'm working with people as well, the other thing is I say to them is communicate to your dog. Please talk to them like you would a person, because they do understand. Our animals absolutely do. They just pick up on different words in different ways, and they're kind of more of visuals. So when we're speaking to them, they are almost kind of receiving images of what we're saying. So kind of to give you an example of that would be, I guess a really good simple one is like, if you're going to hoover, like maybe you'll just think about hoovering and suddenly your dog will run out of the room, because you've got a dog that doesn't like hoovering, because they pick up on this stuff. So I would then say to the person, it's like, tell your dog, I'm going to do the hoovering in like 10 minutes, or later on I'm going to do it. So it almost prepares them for that, so it takes away any stress and anxiety for them. But if we are not communicating, say we have a regular routine and then suddenly you do something different out of that routine. So, I don't know, you're going to the dentist or you're getting a haircut. So you're around at a different time that you wouldn't normally, and then you're going at a different time that you would normally. The dog is having to guess all the time. It's like, hang on a minute, they always leave at 8 and then they come back at 3 or whatever, but they're not doing that today. Like it's gone. I'm sure it's gone past 3. Like
Yeah.
and that creates anxiety in themselves, because you imagine as a human we'd be just guessing. Well,
Yeah.
they're left without that knowledge. Whereas if you start talking to them on a daily basis and you're explaining, oh, actually, tomorrow's going to be different, it will alleviate that. And it
Yeah.
might sound like complete madness to begin with, but I have practiced this with my own animals, and it has helped them immensely. I've often shared it with all my clients, and all of them that have practiced it have like definitely noticed a difference
Yeah.
in their animal, in terms of them being less anxious if they have got that.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, my dad tells his dogs when he's going to work, and you can tell that they react really well to it, because it's like, as soon as he says it, they sort of go upstairs, have a little nap. Like,
because
whereas
they know what's
normally
happening.
otherwise they're thinking, oh, he might come back in a minute, and then they're kind of on edge the whole day. And it makes sense that, and I'm sure they can learn so many words. So even if it wasn't anything apart from just learning the language, I think there's really good practice to get into. And absolutely, I actually think they probably understand way more, because their nuance of understanding sound must be so phenomenal. Like, they must hear tension in our voice, they must hear all of these things. So from a sound perspective, it makes total sense. From an energy perspective, it totally makes sense, because they're almost hypersensitive to body language, to everything.
They're better than us, really. I believe.
Yeah. I mean, yeah, that sounds amazing. So how's that been going, the animal work? You've got some retreats coming up, is that?
Yeah, so I've got I love to teach animal healing, because it really, whether it's for people that want to pursue it as a a kind of career, or if they just want it to kind of deepen their connection to animals. So it works on both levels. I'm always really excited to kind of share that knowledge and wisdom with people and give them that. It does, because it gives you that insightful inner power, doesn't it, to be more supportive for your animals. So so I'm running that teaching course on the 27th of October. So it's a weekend teaching healing retreat in Malaga. And part of the reason for that is to help raise money for the horse sanctuary that we're going to be working at. So it means that everyone's going to get to have lots of lovely horse time with different interactions, and get to practice how to do healing with horses. They do have some donkeys, and there's some cats and stuff that are there as well. So there will be opportunity for like different animals for people to work with, which I think is important.
Sounds very wholesome.
Yeah, and I often run like one-to-one or group sessions as well when people contact me. Like locally in Hastings, there's 2 different animal sanctuaries that I go to. One of them's a horse sanctuary, and one of them's kind of mixed animals. So I'll take my students there, so they get to really practice on animals that do really, really need a lot. And it's great. So it helps the sanctuary out, and they always love it when we come by, because it's just helping their animals that they don't get the time to do that with them. So there's quite a nice opportunity for that as well.
Would you say there's like an entry that I would say Reiki makes sense to someone wanting to heal their animal would maybe start with Reiki, because then you're getting that communication, your verbal communication, before you're picking up on
absolutely it's definitely, I called it the door opener. It's definitely a nice, if you're thinking about like getting into energy, whether it be for yourself or for working with animals, whatever it is that you're feeling that you want to do, I think Reiki's definitely a good starting point, because it teaches you how to channel energy so that you're not using your own energy. Because I have met, I believe that everyone is a natural healer. I believe that we all have that within us. And there are people that don't, and that's just where they are within their belief system. But there are people that are natural. They're like, oh, I already feel like I'm already doing it, and I come across this a lot.
Yeah.
But the one thing that they say is like, oh, I get really tired, like after I've done this healing, and I'm like, okay, this is because you haven't learnt to channel energy. You're using your own energy
Yeah.
rather than learning to channel energy, learning to ground, and learning to cleanse and clear your energy. Those are the three things that are really important.
Yeah.
And Reiki is a good door opener to kind of teach you that, and that's something that I teach as well. So
Yeah, definitely. I can imagine there's some sort of entry path there that could be quite unclear for someone just getting into it.
yeah, it's a
Yeah.
very I think when you're getting into energy healing, there's a real personal journey to it.
Yeah.
Because it helps you to, it's self-development, I guess is the word I'm looking for, because it does help you to get to know yourself better. It teaches you to learn how to communicate with your body in a different way.
Yeah.
And so that naturally will open up other doors of maybe things that you weren't aware of that needed addressing or healing within your life, or maybe like from your childhood. I see it as a massive life tool to support you with that process and becoming more aware of maybe the way that you behave or the way that you do things in your life, and maybe you're trying to understand yourself better. I think it's an amazing tool for that.
Yeah, and I wonder if there's like not ways to go wrong with it, but I'm always, sometimes you see these phrases online that people have picked up from somewhere, like, oh, you know, you can't be a healer until you've healed, or I think there's lots of misconceptions about all of it, but I can imagine actually that being more pronounced with energy work, because you're really bringing something to the table.
Yeah.
In the same analogy with a counsellor, you've got to know what is your own stuff before you're talking through somebody else's stuff.
Absolutely, yeah. You need to be self-healing your things.
Yeah, so you
yeah.
imagine there's a certain level of it, an understanding, or just maybe focus on healing yourself until you feel is that
100%. Yeah. I think that there's lots of amazing Reiki practitioners out there, and I think one of the things, if someone was like looking to get into it, my first advice is like, make sure that you speak to the teacher that you're looking to go to, have a session from them, have a taster session from them, because from that you're going to feel their energy, and you're going to feel if there's like a connection there. And if you're not feeling it, then it's probably not right. I think it's very important, because everyone teaches in different ways, and we all need different things. So even when people come to me, I am checking, what's going on in their life. Like, is this a good time for them to venture into this? Because it does make changes in your life. So it's about making sure that you're absolutely ready for this change that you're gonna like create, and that's gonna come from learning this. Because it does, it naturally does. And sometimes that can be a big change. Like with my story, it was, this extreme, like waking up like a new person. And there has been, along the way, there's been other massive changes that I've had through healing that I've received for myself. So it's not something I think people should enter into just like, oh yeah, it feels like a good idea, like lightly. Make sure that you're ready, for sure, definitely. And I think if you're thinking, oh, I'd really love to get into like doing this for other people, you do need to spend that time working on yourself and making sure that you have those healthy boundaries on healing yourself, and making sure that you know that you're right. And I think as an example of that would be, I've been doing this for 11 years now, but if I am going through something through my own life where perhaps I've had tension or stress brought on by something, I will not work on those days. Like, I would never work on somebody if, for example, maybe a couple of years ago I had a bereavement in the family, and so I stopped working for a couple of weeks, because I knew that I wasn't in a place where I could actually give to others, and I needed to really work through that and process that and have that time before being able to get back to like healing other people.
That's really responsible, I think. Counsellors sometimes talk about the same thing as well. But actually, yeah, definitely when in a way a counsellor is limited, that they're only working on the mind. So you know, you can counsel someone and kind of keep your mind at bay, but you can't kind of keep your body.
The energy. No, it's a big deeper thing.
No, that's a really nice. It's a nice respect for what you do.
Thank you.
I was going to say something then, but I'm not sure what it was. I guess it was along the lines of, like being ready to start a healing journey in general, I think is something that people shouldn't be scared of, that starting that journey, but just recognizing that it might bring about changes.
Yeah, absolutely.
And sometimes quite profound changes, you know. The more work I do internally on myself and overcoming anything that I've traumas, everyone's got traumas, the more work I do on myself, the more I find it harder to be in ideal situations. Like I could definitely never go into like a sales role now, because I might feel like I'm just being immoral, and that discomfort internally. So there might be a bit of upheaval in your life before you start that journey. I always think it's worth sort of analysing the life. Is that a healed life, or are you just going to be getting on the commute back to your stressful job while you're doing that, you know? So yeah, that totally makes sense.
I think it's one of those things. I always want to make sure people are ready, but then I also say, like, with big resistance comes big healing. Like when we're feeling really in resistance to something, in my experience, when I've had that and I've gone like, whoa, and like my whole body's contracted, I'm like, oh, okay, this is something I've got to kind of venture into and face and deal with, and I do. And then when I have, and I've come out the other side of that, I'm like, oh my God, that was wild. And really profound, and now I feel incredible because I've journeyed through that, and I'm so much, you know, more alive and stronger with that. And it's and that, you know, that in my work, which is kind of why I people are like, why is your business name Hazeology? It's because of, like, I'm constantly continuing to kind of study and learn more about energy, and you know, I know quite a lot, but I would never say I know everything, and there's always something more for us to learn, and to go deeper with. So
that's something I really loved about. So when I had a session with you, the idea that you know, I didn't have to go to you and say, I want a reflexology session. I just sort of went to you. You just, you know, you use all the tools at your disposal, which I find, it seems like quite a unique approach. I haven't seen that be done very often, but maybe it's just that you meet those people that have been doing it for a long time.
I think I know with my practice, and I think we spoke about this before at some point, is that I am I'm a Reiki teacher. I'm a Reiki master teacher, and so when people come to me, they're like, "Oh, it's Reiki healing," and I've had a lot of people come to me that've had Reiki from other practitioners, and then after the session, they've gone to me, Hazel, that's not just Reiki. Like that was something else. And I say to them, well, I put that down to it's just how my practice has evolved. And like with anything, as we practice, it's like, intuition to me is like a muscle, and I guess I've been flexing that muscle for 11 years with the work that I do, and so it's like that I pick up on the different things. And so when people come to me, it's not just a Reiki session, it's the intuitive healing, it's the body work that I do. So sometimes I'm kind of like, oh, okay, I need to place my finger on a certain like acupressure point on the body because I can feel that there's anger in that particular point and I need to release that out for this person. And so I'll literally do that, and the person will go, oh, I didn't even know that was there. What the hell is that? Like they'll feel it and they'll feel that response. So I guess that's kind of a way for me to describe part of what I do. It is a bit different.
It's probably, I can't imagine any way of it being more supportive for the person.
Yeah.
You know,
Yeah.
you're never restricting yourself. You're always trying to learn that extra
Exactly.
thing.
And it's I think it's also being open, and I allow for, everything is welcome in a session. I think that's really important for the
Yeah.
person and for myself as well, in terms of like, okay, normally, Reiki session or the intuitive healing session will last an hour, but sometimes there might be those occasions where, we're diving into something a little bit deeper, and maybe we're going into inner child work, or maybe it's something else, and so that session might be a little bit longer than normal. So it's just having that flexibility for that, I think, is really important.
Yeah, it's a very impressive skill to have.
Thank
Yeah.
you.
Yeah. Um, and I guess in your mind you don't sort of have a priority. You don't have or maybe a priority of the thing that you found most fascinating. Was there anything that sort of surprised you when you learned that as a thing?
I think it was. It honestly just blew my mind. Like 11 years ago, like you think,
Yeah.
I just was like, after I had my first healing session, so it was the first Reiki session I ever had, and I would never tell someone to have it like that. It was an unorthodox way to receive it, but because it was between friends, I guess it was that trust. But waking up that next day, I was like, this is magic. This is like wizardry. Like, this can't be real. And I had all of those things of thinking, hang on a minute, like, how is this possible? And that just blew my mind, that somebody could put their hands on me and draw all of this stuff, that the trauma and the stress and the anxiety and the pain and all of that, like literally draw it out of my body, like they were just pulling it out, and then it wasn't there anymore. Totally, absolutely just blew my mind. And that has been, I guess, the one thing that continues, even though I've been doing it for like to blow my mind, even as somebody that does it.
Yeah.
So when I do a session for someone, if they have this experience, because I get it a lot, where someone will come and they're like, that really, like they said, I felt this coming out of me or that coming out of me. And the difference that I see in the person in a space of an hour, like they arrive looking one way and they leave looking like somebody's like buffed their whole face. Or do you know
like
what
more
I mean?
colour
like
in their skin.
They're more colour in their skin, and
like
they
that.
look brighter, and their eyes are shinier, and all of that just never ceases to amaze me. Even though I know like how all of that works, and I understand that process, but I still get blown away by it, even after 11 years.
Yeah, no, I can imagine.
So the
I think we're moving into a really interesting phase of everything. So I think like less is becoming about the medical model, and it's more this whole healing.
Yeah.
And people are seeing profound impacts with it. And yeah, I think people are starting. I think there's been like a thing of trauma, like I think people reject the idea of trauma sometimes as like, oh yeah, traumatic things happen all the time, but it's that holding on to it. It's that holding on to it. Yeah, and it's the whole. I think it's the holding on to it that is the trauma. It's not you've seen something that's shocked you, and that's not the thing you're trying to overcome. It's the way you've changed since that. You know, it's the way that you've had to adjust yourself to hold that, and then when you release it, you have absolute choice in, do I need to act like this now? Like it can change. It can
really
change things
does.
in your mind.
It makes
even
you
though
feel
it's done something physical in your body as well. Like
it makes you feel like you've got more space in your body. I myself, I had a massive healing for myself this summer. And that was actually with horses. So it was when I went to Canada, and I went on this trip was for myself, for something I wanted to do. And it was a real shamanic journey. And part of that was learning about equine collective consciousness, and receiving a healing in that way. And it was incredible to have all these horses around me while I'm laying on a food trough with cushions, laying on their food tray, essentially, with one facilitator, and then all these horses as a herd working together to heal me. And the intention, I set an intention, and the intention was to heal something from my inner child, There was some pain there, and I was like, I'm ready to release this. I'd really like to release this. And that was my intention, and my intention was also to feel more love for myself, because I already do, but it's always like, you can have more, why not? So those were just my simple intentions, and it was the most profound healing I've had in a really long time. And it was incredible. And afterwards I came away from that, and I literally, my whole body, I was like, I feel lighter, I feel like I've got all this space in my body. And the thing that was, I suppose the trauma did involve my mum, my relationship with my mum. And so when I came back home, I did go and see my mum, and it was like, it was different. It was so different. And I was like, oh, all those things that would normally trigger me and set me off and all of that, it was like not there. And even my mum noticed it. And I hadn't told her. She didn't know. She just said...
I always think that's the great test.
Yeah,
it
she was
is
like
we might
different.
notice it, but if they're noticing it, it's like that's how you heal within families. I think it's a lot of... It'd be great if everyone was doing that, but also the amount of healing that they'll get from that anyway.
Exactly. Yeah, exactly.
That sounds really profound.
It was very profound.
Are the horses... is that what those horses do regularly?
Yeah. So these horses are... I always get goosebumps when I talk about them. These horses are so magical.
I find horses quite magical anyway. They're like so intertwined in the human story.
These guys are like something else that I've honestly, you can tell by my face, I'm just like, oh. They are really magical, and the guardian that they work with, Michelle, she's incredibly amazing. And so I'm learning this, so I'm this modality. So it's called Equine Collective Consciousness. It's her thing that she has created, and it's basically about humans working in partnership with horses. So in what I received, it was like a human working in partnership with horses to provide a healing for another human.
That's awesome.
And this is what they did. And these horses, I mean, they go into trance, and they kind of like, one of them, he's just, I feel very connected to this horse. His name's Malik, and he was over my head, like his head was across my head at one point. And I'm like, I had my eyes shut and then opened my eyes because I could feel him, and he was nuzzling something around my throat, and it was clearing stuff from my throat.
Wow.
And then he lifted his head away, and then the facilitator said to me, you need to use your voice, so you need to make a sound, like a tone. And I'm like, okay. And so I started to tone, and I kind of felt it was difficult, like it couldn't come out. And then Malik, the horse, slowly pulled the cushion from underneath my head, and he pulled it away. And because he was pulling it away, I was like, what's happening? And I looked at him, and the look he gave me was like, now tone, like now release your voice, release the sound. And I did, and I was like, oh, it's so much easier. Like, I just needed my head to be in a different position, and he knew this.
Holding your throat open, maybe.
Because my head needed to be further back. Like with the cushion, it was like compressing, so it needed to be, and he just knew this. And so this allowed for more stuff to come out of us, because when we use our voice, and we're using our voice to tone or sing or sound, that does actually release and clear, the vibration in the body, because your own voice can do that as well. That's a whole other subject, but
that may be a big... I mean, you're more than welcome to come back as a guest any time, because I'm sure there's plenty of things that we could talk about. Do you think that hearing your own voice, do you think that's everyone sort of tailored to their own voice?
Absolutely. Yeah, absolutely. Your voice has a vibration and healing frequency. And so if you're doing mantras, or just toning Om, for example, and you keep doing that, you're going to feel like that resonance in your body, and you'll feel that vibration, and there is a healing that you can do for yourself with your voice with that.
That's awesome. Yeah. That horse thing sounds amazing. I haven't spent too much time around horses, and I don't know. There are some horror films where horses seem to be linked into horror films, and I think that maybe it's not a thing of culturally they're scary to us. but I think there's something in like culturally they're able to see us. I think that's what that is.
Yeah,
It's
they
all,
can.
you know, in horror films there's very often, if a horse is in it, it's like showing the big eye of the horse.
Yeah.
I know it's in The Ring and stuff. So when you were saying that, although I'm not scared by horses,
No.
I can imagine feeling a bit nervous having like all those horses sort of around you, and
Yeah.
I can imagine that's quite a tense moment to start. Like,
Yeah, I mean, for me, because I can understand for others it'll be like whoa, but for me I was loving it.
yeah.
It was amazing, but it was very interesting to see how each horse had their own, I guess, intention and thing that they were doing. So it would be like some of the herd were standing a little back, and they're like, okay, we're going to be the anchor, and we're going to support and hold the space.
Yeah.
And then there was the other horses where they'd be like, okay, we're the doers. We're going to be the ones that are doing the clearing. But what we need from the rest of the herd is for you to support and hold us in doing this.
Yeah.
And what I love about that is that just recently this has been coming up a lot, and it's been about how it really takes a village to help you to, you know, get healthy in terms of your mental health and wellness. So we're often trying to do a lot of things by ourselves, or we think that we need to, maybe through the way that we've been brought up or trauma or whatever. Got to be independent, got to do this by myself, couldn't possibly accept any help.
Yeah.
But actually, you know, even in anything we're doing, if it's a project or getting something out there, we usually need maybe 3 or 4 other people to kind of help get that out there. And so it really does take a village to support that process. And a herd of horses are, to me, like this little village. Each of them have got their, you know, their job that they do, and they just know what it is, and they just support and hold each other in that, without, just knowing. They just know.
That sounds like there's some incredible power in that.
Yeah.
An experience I had with a job quite recently. I can't really talk about my work actually on the podcast for some reason, but no, I guess I can. It's sort of working with special. I can't mention the place, but working with special needs and complex needs and things like that. This place arranged. There's maybe like 12 or 13 people to all be in a circle, and they're like a drama troupe. That as soon as the person with the complex needs goes into the room, they all start saying their name and singing their name and welcoming them in, and like just seeing the power of that. It totally shows that there's that phrase, you know, it takes a tribe to. Yeah,
it does take a tribe. It's collective energy. Collective energy is really powerful. I find that in my work, something varied in my work that I do is womb healing, and when I've held circle for women, I have 12 women sit in circle, and we do a tea ceremony, an embodied movement, and then there's a womb healing attribute part to that, and then it's like deep sound healing at the end of that process. But in that, the women that come together, the collective energy that's in the room and what's going on is always like more, I guess, more powerful. It's more empowered, and there's always a mirror going on between them as well, which I find fascinating, because each one's always really, really different compared to somebody just coming on a one-on-one basis. What they will experience is still going to be profound for them, but in terms of that collective energy and the support and the holding that comes from the whole group, it's just it's beyond words.
When you say mirroring in a group, you're meaning that like everybody's trying to heal that one person, but there's probably 1 or 2 people in the group that are also going through that emotion.
Exactly, yeah. So for example, maybe I'll advertise I'm going to do a womb healing, and the women that come together for that group may be all suffering from endometriosis, or another time it was all the women that came were all going through menopause. Or another time it was like a mixture of women that had suffered endometriosis or women that had, problems conceiving. But it was always like, you know, half and half, or they're all going through the same thing. And it's not like I've put that out there where I've gone, okay, I only want women that have got this problem or that problem. It's not.
Oh, I see.
So then at the beginning of a session.
That's a total example of that thing of like the body finds the healing
body
it needs.
it really does. Honestly, I've lost count of how many women
Yeah.
have come to me, have said and just said to me, you were just the person that I needed to receive from.
Yeah.
And it's just that's the medicine. And it gave them exactly what they needed.
Yeah.
And I said to them, well, that's great, because my intention when I'm doing my healing is for people to receive exactly what they need when they really need it. So
No, that's incredible.
Yeah.
I mean, I can attest to that in a way, because it was on a psychedelic healing session that I had that I got this sense that I'm going to find or I need to find someone with shamanic skills, and it was around that month that we met.
Okay, yeah.
Which I found very bizarre, but yeah, very helpful as well.
Cool.
Yeah,
This
yeah.
is what I say. This is how it happens.
The
and
spiritual realm
in the spiritual realm,
is
yeah.
looking after you.
Yeah.
There's a map that's just like guiding everyone there.
Definitely,
Nice.
you do get guided to where you're meant to be. I definitely believe that.
Yeah, that's incredible. Yeah, so it's been amazing. I'm sure we could talk endlessly about each of these things because they're so interesting. Yeah, but I know
Yeah.
you've got a client to get to see soon. So yeah, we like to end the podcast by kind of part of the connected sphere is, you know, the audience gets to connect with things that are important to you. Doesn't have to be important, can be anything, but have you got any sort of 3 recommendations, things that they can look into, things that they can research?
Okay, yeah. I think in terms of energy, I would say I would recommend looking at Oliver Nino, because
Nino.
he's Oliver Nino, yeah. So
Yeah.
he is known as the spiritual activist. And he's got a lot of amazing things on YouTube and just kind of little introductions. And it's a nice kind of starting point to learn about energy. And I just love the way that he simplifies stuff for people.
Yeah.
And yeah, I think a reason I'm drawn to him is because I came across him only, I think, a few years ago, and everything he was saying, I was like, I'm always sharing this with people. So it's great to have someone else that's putting it out there in a bigger way, which is great. So I would definitely recommend looking into him if you're feeling like dipping your toe in and you're not quite sure and you're just starting out. I guess my second thing would be just always strive for balance in your life, in whatever it is. If you're finding that you're going too far one way, maybe overworking, maybe underworking, is try and bring some balance into your life, with your own emotional health and well-being.
Yeah.
Because to me, everything is all about balance.
Definitely. I always think that I meet a lot of people that are on some sort of healing path.
Yeah.
And even that, you need a break.
Yeah,
you
absolutely do. You absolutely do.
You need to be able to sort of keep that lightness when you're...
Yeah, and I guess the third thing, I think, rather than recommend, I think people need to hear this all the time, and even I need to hear it as well as a reminder, is to remember that you are the most important person, and you do really need to put yourself first.
Yeah.
And when you do put yourself first in terms of whatever it is that you need, you're going to reap the benefits of that in terms of being able to do more for other people around you.
Absolutely.
And we do forget ourselves. So, just remember yourself and do something good for yourself every day.
That's some expert advice there. I love it. Yeah. So well said as well. I think it's those kind of things that we can sometimes forget.
We do, and they're really simple. And I am all about, even the way I teach, I'm like, I make it simple because I think we need that. We need things not because we need to have them doled down, but because it makes it easier for us to feel it's achievable.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Excellent. Thanks. I've loved this. It's been fascinating.
Thanks for having me.
Thanks for coming on.
Yeah, you're welcome.
And thank you for listening to The Connected Sphere. We'll have more episodes soon. And thanks for checking in.